Good morning to you. It's Wednesday. What a great day it is. Every day is a great day in God's kingdom. Amen. I want to bring you a word today, and that word is from Genesis, and it's to do with Cain and Abel. We read in Genesis 4 and verse 1. By the way, Adam and Eve had just gone out of the Garden of Eden, been pushed out because of the sin that they have committed there. So, now Adam knew his wife Eve, and she conceived and bore Cain, saying, I have gotten a man with the help of the Lord. And again she bore his brother Abel. Now Abel was a keeper of sheep, and Cain a worker of the ground. In the course of time Cain brought to the Lord an offering of the fruit of the ground. And Abel also brought of the firstborn of his flock and of their fat portions. And the Lord had regard for Abel and his offering, but for Cain and his offering he had no regard. So Cain was very angry, and his face fell. The Lord said to Cain, Why are you angry? Why is your face fallen? If you do well, will you not be accepted? And if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. Cain spoke to Abel his brother, and when they were out in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, Where is Abel your brother? He said, I do not know. Am I my brother's keeper? And the Lord said, What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. Cain goes on and he kills his brother Abel. Cain, who is the firstborn. Cain, who says he's a tiller of the ground, that he works the ground. He's a farmer, but it's an arable farmer. And we have Abel, his brother, his younger brother, who looks after livestock. We see that the word says here, he says that in the course of time, Cain brought an offering. It didn't say he brought his first fruits. It says he brought an offering of the fruits of the ground. But Abel brought the firstborn of the flock. He actually sacrificed something. He didn't wait until he had plenty and had had his fill to be able to offer what was left to God. He offered the firstborn, the very first fruits from the flock. He offered to God, trusting that God would multiply and give him more than he'd already got. Cain, on the other hand, offered some fruits to God. It doesn't say the first fruits. The Bible is very specific about first fruits. The first fruits he kept for himself because he didn't trust that God would provide again. We see then that God comes to Cain. Cain is set on a path. Cain is set on a path of pride where he's rebelling against God already. This is Adam and Eve's first son. After their sin and their rebellion, we see their eldest son immediately is starting on rebellion against God, not bringing the first fruits and honouring God, but keeping for himself and giving to God some fruit. Then he's angry at God. He doesn't take God's judgment as being correct. And instead of being humble before God and accepting that he is wrong, he becomes prideful. So God goes to him and he talks to Cain and warns him because he can see the path that Cain is on. And he says to him, if you do well, will you not be accepted? But if you don't do well, sin is crouching at your door and its desire is to have you, but you must master it. Cain goes on to kill his brother Abel. He still doesn't listen to the warning that God gives him about the problems with sin, the problems with his anger and with his pride. And even then when God comes to him and says, Where is Abel, your brother? God knows where Abel is. Cain turns around and he says, Am I my brother's keeper? You just see in there the arrogance, the rebellion against God, the hatred almost that he has towards God because he feels rejected right at the very start, because his heart towards God is full of pride and is not humble. There's a lesson here for us. First, we should bring the first fruits to God. We should bring the best of what we've got to offer to God. The best of our day, the best of our time, the best of our resource. We should bring those as an offering to God, not waiting to give to God when everybody else has had their fill. And when we think that we've got enough, we just bring to God the dregs of what we have, the dregs of our time and our life. What little that we feel that we can get away with offering to God. Abel, on the other hand, trusted in God. He brought the first of the flock that he had tried to tend and build up. He brought the first of that to God and trusted that God would give him what else that he needed. The second thing is the humility, that we shouldn't let pride creep into our relationship with God. The devil would say to Adam and Eve, surely God didn't mean that. We must have a humble heart towards God. that we should listen to his warnings about sin. He said sin has a desire for you to rule over you, but you must rule over sin. You must have dominion over sin. In our everyday lives, may we have dominion over sin, and may we have a humble heart towards God and bring to him the best of what we can offer, the best of our time. God bless you. I hope that you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow morning.